Welcome to the world united. Welcome to the world united.
Yes, we have our speaker, Andre Rehel. He is a Nidra Yoga student for 57 years, Nidra Yoga instructor for the past 20 years across the 5 continents, board member of European Union of Yoga, founder of Nidra Consciousness Foundation, member of Indian Yoga Association, director of Nidra Study Centers, Somapa Avignon, France, Pran Bindu, Ujjain, India, organizer of organic fairs in Paris, Santé or treatment, natural health and vivere and Travelier or treatment, alternative ways of living, 30,000 visitors. We welcome you, Andreji. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm afraid Yugandhar knows more than I know.
Oh, it's all your humbleness, Andraji. It's all your. Thank you very much.
It will be a short talk. I suppose so, because we never know when we start speaking what's going to happen.
Yeah, we have got 15 minutes of your very, very precious time, very valuable time. So after that, we also invite you to join the discussion, please.
Achha.
Thank you.
So 15 minutes is more than enough. So just a few things. First is, I left when I was about 23, 24. I left France, going to India, walking all the way. Precisely, we took a train to Italy and then we started walking. And it took, of course, many months. And I can say that from that moment, I've never stopped being on the roads. And I came closer and closer to some traditions, and I studied a lot. And what I was mainly touched by was the tantrism teachers that I met. And most of them were wandering yogis. And later on, I went, so they were mainly belonging to what we call a sampradaya, a lineage, which is called a nat, which means the keeper, people who are keeping, preserving. And then later on, I studied a lot with the Udasin sampradaya. Udasin means the one who are not staying at home. And I studied many, many years. I'm still studying. And I was invited in many, many countries all over the world. Not so many, but maybe 40 countries. And when I went into the Islamic countries, I stayed quite a while in Turkey, in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then North Africa. I met the Sufi traditions, and I was very touched with some of them. It started very early in 1976. I stayed in a tariqa, in a Sufi community in Mazar-e-Sharif, north of Afghanistan, near the Russian border. And I've met extraordinary people there. And what I found through time was that there was close links in between this, what I would call the Tantra tradition and the Sufi tradition. So I will just go to 5 or 6 or 7 points where I found they were meeting together. The first thing has to do with the definition itself of Tantra and Sufi. When we go deep into the definition of Tantra, Tan, it's coming from a root word in Sanskrit, which is tat. Tat means that. That is a pronoun that has no definition, which means what cannot be named, what is before the noun, pronoun. And tra, when it is as a suffix, means to preserve, to protect, sorry. So the very, let's say, deep definition of Tantra has to do with this, to preserve, to protect what cannot be said, what cannot be expressed, which can be understood as universal silence. So to take care of this universal, this is the very first and hold. It is not etymology. It has to do a little with etymology. And then there is a second meaning of this word. You know, when you're weaving on the weaving machine, this little thing that goes, the shuttle, this is what means the word Tantra. The shuttle that brings the thread in between, you go in between the thread. And by going in between the thread, you are making a cloth. When we come to definition of Sufi, the very whole definition is a woolen made of wool cloth. So that's very strange for me because into the meaning of the words that define those two ways of spiritual ways, at some point they are meeting just in the meaning what they mean. Now the second thing has to do with body, the relationship with body, with, let's call it body matter. So in Tantra, we are working a lot with the body, and the project with the body is to keep it quiet and sat for a long time. That's what people have called hasana later on. And you have to keep the body totally quiet, not moving at all. And then into this tranquility, we work on the breath, which is understood as the movement of life. Now, when we go to the Sufi spiritual way, there's something that is called zikr, which the main meaning is the remembrance, to remember godliness. And in the zikr, it's quite, there is a part that looks like the use of body in Tantra. So we sit without moving, but the trunk is moving all the time, or like that, or the head, with a breathing process, which is very, very loud. That is which slowly sounds like halla. And then in the Tantra practice, what I studied, we say that the sound la or lam or lang is the vibration of the basis of what they call the Kundalini, the basis of the spine, la. And the sound ah has to do with this area. So this is coming from the Nat tradition. They sometimes do not match with what we read in books that are giving the basis. And we have the same practice. But instead of chanting Allah, Allah, we chant Allah, Allah, Allah. Fair enough. And that was for me a very big surprise when staying with this Murshid in Afghanistan, and when I started learning with one Shaivite ascetic called Kashmiri Babu. Another point is chanting. So in Tantra, there are two ways of chanting. One is very devotional, it is called kirtan. It is not very much practiced. And the other one is called mantra, which is vibrating sounds. In Sufism, there is exactly the same thing, which is called wazifa. Wazifa has two ways. One is a prayer, which is mainly pronounced in the morning in the mosque. And there are also those Sufi chantings, either alone or in group. And there is a common point to this. It is about putting the body into vibration so that it brings to an ecstatic state, to an ecstasy. And there are a common point also. It is that there are two common points. It is that the mantra is given by the guru, by the master. And the wazifa is given by the murshid, the master also. And the second common point is the precision of pronunciation. Unless the student can pronounce exactly as the teacher teaches, he is not allowed to chant it. So here again, the definitions, the body and chanting, they have common points. Next one has to do with energy. In Tantra, we talk about chakras. Chakras means a wheel, and those wheels can be figured like in Europe they have built many of roundabouts. You know, when you're driving your car, you come to a roundabout. So there are many roads coming together. Then you turn and you take another road. So it is about the same design. Huh? A chakra can be understood as a place where different movements of energy, channels, some people say, are meeting, they're melting, they're moving, and then they are distributed. And so in Tantra, there are mainly seven wheels of energy. In fact, when we go in deeper teaching, deeper learning, there are many, many more. But what is taken in account most of the time is only these seven. And then in the Sufi, there is what is called latifa, which are 5 inner spaces of energy. So there's only 5. I mean, there are 5. And in Tantra, there are 7. And latifas are the same thing. There are places where energies meet. And the common point in between the Tantra point of view regarding chakras and the Sufi point of view regarding latifas is that one of those energetical centers has a very big importance, and it is the same. It's in the middle of the chest or in the middle of the back, according to how we look at the thing. So here again, there are these common points regarding the movement of life within anyone, and as we call it today, energy. In English, we don't have much words for this movement. We only have the word energy. For example, in Nidra, we have 210 different words for energies. But anyway, just this movement of life, which goes through different, how would you say that? Intensities or qualities. And one of the main, in some of the teachings of Indian Tantra, and is the heart, I mean the chest, and same thing with the Latifa in Sufism. The next point, which is common, has to do with what I was talking about at the beginning, wandering life. Many lineages in India are considered that the person who left everything as a social life and goes wandering has a kind of, let's say, higher quality than others. And these people are called sannyasin or sadhus in India. That is, making this choice of leaving your house and wander. The idea behind this is God will take care of me. I will no more rent a house. I will no more work. I will no more try to use my nationality or my name. I will just be a wanderer, wandering yogi. In the Sufi, there is also the same. What today are called the kalandar. Not only today, that's a long story. Or dervishes. They have a common point, which is they are called God intoxicated. That it has to do with sometimes chanting. I remember living that life and begging also. I remember living that life in India and wandering yogi. And we took vows, and vows were never to sleep in a house where there are women. And of course, there are women everywhere. So sometimes they have some ashram, places that we can stay. But most of the time we sleep outside in open air. And the second vow was never talking about social things, only spiritual topics. But it is well understood in India, when you are a wanderer, wandering yogi, people don't ask much about your life. They only come for spiritual encounters, topics. And the third vow was begging your food. That is, well, I remember very well that period. We were allowed to go to houses at lunchtime and beg. And begging was done only through chanting. You couldn't ask anything. Chanting. So people knew in the countryside. And the rule was, if you are not given food, go to the second house. if you're not given food to the second house, go to the third. And if you're not given food to the third house, it means God has decided that it's a good day for you to fast. You don't go on. So with these 3 vows, that is, once again, sleeping in open air, in nature, speaking only about spiritual topics, and completely depending on destiny to have food. That was the life I led for some times, several months. And also being understood as a passerby, somebody who is passing. You never stay anywhere. I remember we were not allowed to sleep more than 3 nights at the same time. And at one time I was traveling with another yogi, and I met him on the platform of a train station. And we felt friends very quickly. And so his way was, we stay on the station, people come, they put questions, travelers, they give some food. And when there is a train coming, let's go on it and let's go. And we were going. I never knew where we were going to, never. And sometimes when the train stopped in a station, he would say, okay, let's go down here. So we went down, stay on the platform. At that time in the stations, you could have, they have wash. You could take a shower. They were very equipped. Today they're less and less. And so that was that kind of life. And then when I met some calendars in Muslim countries, some of them were running exactly the same type of life, but they never took train. They were just walking, and they were chanting. And I also met an Algerian woman, which is very, very rare. She had left her family, children and house and husband, and she was just walking across North Africa, chanting. And today she has changed his life. She has become a famous singer. She's well known. She lives in Paris now. Another thing which is also close to Tantric and Sufis has to do with intoxicants. So they are called God, sorry, they are called God intoxicated, but they also take intoxicants. Sadhus, many sadhus, they take what they call charas, marijuana, we could say, charas, but it's dry leaves. And the reason why we use this is not for getting high, is for reducing some tensions, some obstacles that are reducing the possibilities for awakening the mind. And I have studied Nidra for many, many years, more than 50 years, and I'm teaching. And we are also using it, but we don't consume it, never. We make a kind of paste out of it that we put on the wrists and on the forehead. That helps a lot for not sleeping, staying aware of what is going on, kind of being aware of the mind processes going on, kind of meditation. And when I met these calendars, they are also using this for the same reason. In North Africa, most of the time is very concrete, what they call hashish. So they also use it, but once again, it is not for getting high, it is for reducing the resistances for perceiving reality as a whole. And then there is a last point where there is meetings. It is about music and poetry. The word tantra also means texts, and some of them, it's only poetry. When you read them at first, you don't understand that it might show a practice, for example. It sounds like poetry only. And there is the same thing with Sufis, what they call the karabat writings. It's only poetry. And the main thing is to put them into music, chanting. For both of these two traditions. And I remember I taught for quite a long time in North Africa, always the same thing, Nidra Yoga. And I was in contact with some tariqas in Morocco mainly, North Morocco and South Morocco. And Essaouira also, they are extraordinary group, tariqas of Sufis. And that was the big point. Meeting together and chanting. So in Sufism, the main chants are saying there's only God is God. There's only one God, it is God. That's it. And La ilaha illallah. And anyway, and in Tantrism, there are much more poetry that is sung, but the process is the same, is chanting together for reaching a state of what we could say ecstasy. That is, ecstasy means being one with God, whatever we call it. So these are all these common points I noticed while studying on one side with Tantra and on the other side with Sufis. I stop here and I think it's about 15 minutes. Thank you.
So good. Thank you very much, Chandraji.
Chandraji.
Hari Om, my dear.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
So,
I want to say a few more things.
yeah, please.
I am so happy to be today with Africans people. I just love it. I'm very, very, very happy. That was one of my fear when Yugandhar organized this meeting in Africa. I was thinking, I hope there will be many, many people from, how do you say, Black Africa? Because in North Africa, it's a different perception of life. And I have always hoped for going into, in French we say l'Afrique noire, we say Black Africa also. Esther, tu sais ça?
I'm not sure we say Black Africa, but somehow we all know what you're talking about.
So I was once invited to Benin,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't go, and I was supposed to study with some magic people, I don't know. And I would love to travel to Central Africa and meet all those traditions. When I was young, I was afraid of it, but today it's okay. I'm no more afraid. So I'm very, very happy to see you, Edmund Nyamwati, I don't know how to say, and Yebga. I'm so happy.
Andreji, thank you
Yeah,
very much for
yeah.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful presentation. Have a wonderful subject, Sufism, Tantra, Yoga. You combine everything. With all my humbleness, I would like to present this a very small token of appreciation for your stature. The World United proudly presents Andre RIEHL as an esteemed presenter for the World Parliament on Spirituality, Africa chapter, 3rd edition. Thank you very much.
Thank
So
you
please
again.
stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have got a couple of questions on your subject, Andreji. Your wisdom is much more required. You know many forms of yoga. You traveled a lot. You explored yoga and tantra, the mystical aspects of so many traditions, spiritual traditions across the world. And the whole world knows this primordial sound called as Om, which is otherwise called as Anahata Nada. Nada means sound. Anahata means that which comes without friction. Ahata means that's the sound which comes with clash. This is Ahata Nada. Clash, clap of the hand is Ahata Nada. Sound comes when two objects meet each other. But Anahata means sound which comes without the second one.
Mm-hmm.
So Om is one sound which comes without the clash of any other object. That's why it is called as Pranavanada, the first sound, or Anahatanada, the sound which happens without friction with second object. So that has been considered as a sacred sound. Not only it is not just a sound, but a vibration of universe, people say. So all the harmony, wherever there is harmony, if you hear it as a sound, when harmony speaks, it has sound of Om. And how do you compare this sound with the most favorite, most sacred sound of Sufis? Who is a very sacred sound of Sufism? So how do you compare this Om sound with the sound of who?
Yeah. I don't compare it, but let me answer just a little different way. This hanahat, the sound that comes when there is no beating or no friction. It means what in Zen, in the Zen tradition, they say, what is the sound of one hand?
Yeah, there's a cone, the cone tradition of Zen.
So we could say at the very basic level, it has to do with silence. Now, when we're talking about Om, Om is a sound. And what is important in Om is not when you chant it, when you come at the end, when you have no more air to breathe out. Because when you speak, you breathe out, Om. And so at the very end, there's no more. So first you have the sound, O. And for example, in the Mandukya Upanishad, we talk about it in the European conclave. In the Mandukya Upanishad, this sound is decomposed in 3 different sounds, a, o, m. And then there is a 4th sound, which is not a sound. It's a silent, it's a vibration, it's a silence, sorry. Now, in between the sound and silence, there is something. There is what is called the vibration, spanda. And then there are informations, vrittis, that can be translated as this. And then there is silence. So first we have the sound, which has to do with the matter. Then from the sound comes comes the vibration. The particularity of a vibration, it is something that is moving without going anywhere, just movement. So that is simultaneously movement and steadiness. And then comes something very subtle information, which is closer to steadiness than movement. And lastly comes silence. So the reason of chanting Om is for when we stop chanting. Now, in the Buddhist tantric tradition, the main sound is Sorry. You might know that they have this main mantra, they say Om Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. So, and we chant, I remember staying with Buddhist tantric, and the main chant was chanting Om, 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 Om. So I suppose, but I'm not sure, that it has to do with the who in the Sufi tradition. The difference is that when you chant who, you start from silence because there is a H in the sound. If we would write it, we would start by the letter H. Who. And in the tantric tradition, it comes at the end. It is So behind the M there is the ending. How could I explain that? In fact, you have to put your tongue in a particular way so it goes toward the palate, and you cannot speak anymore. But when you write it, it comes to and in some writing they start with H also. So we have to understand that this different type of chanting are very deeply mixed with the breathing. There is a silent thing in the breathing, which is always with aspiration or with exhalation. But there is this tiny thing which is in between the sound and silence. And I remember in this Tadika I stay in Afghanistan. At the beginning, it was so complicated to sing like that. Because at first, the main word was Allah. And then we have to learn to pronounce it. La, 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 la. So it's okay for 5 minutes. But the exercises were all night long. And when we couldn't sing anymore because you're out of breath, then you move to hoo, 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 hoo. So that's the only few things I could find. And I have another story which is not about Sufism. It is in the Orthodox Christianism. I live for sometimes on a small place in Greece, which is only for men. They have only monasteries. It is called Mount Athos, where it's very Orthodox, Christian Orthodox. And I live in a Russian monastery. And I remember we had all night long exercises. And in Tantra, at one time, we studied sounds like Ariom, with following different parts of the body inside. So it goes like that. Say, Ariom, 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 Ariom. And then the tune moves in. Ariom, 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 Ariom. And then when I was with these mystics, Russian mystic, Orthodox, we were in the little church, and there was a rule: we were not allowed to lean on the walls. We have to stay standing from midnight until sunrise. And at one time they start chanting the name of Maria, and they were chanting like this: Mariam, 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 Mariam. It was exactly the same tune, and in fact it was the same words. But on one side it was Ariom, and the other side was Mariam. And so what I mean by that is I feel that before the teaching were put into words, mystics, mystics, they don't have any particular nationality. They don't belong. I don't feel like belonging to any country. And fortunately, they gave me a French passport. I'm very sorry about this. But before languages started writing or talking about spirituality, mystics, we still are living with the vibrations of the sounds. And what I slowly kind of perceive, staying in different traditions, is that sometimes, not always, the same sounds have become different words. And when, with time, they were kind of transformed to give a particular meaning. And then when we come to the meaning, there is conflict in between traditions, in between what so-called religions, this crazy behavior that you organized freedom. This is so, it is just